Alright, what is up, YouTube boxing family? It is K-Rod here. I wanted to talk about the fight news that I've been hearing about in regards to Errol Spence and Terence Bud Crawford. So yeah, let's get right to it. I'm not too sure if it's something that is consistent, but I figured let me talk about it because it is something that is, a bit interesting on my end to possibly cover. So, alright, yeah, let's get right down to business. So the thing about what I've been hearing is that Terence Crawford and Errol Spence are rumored to be, to basically have the fight set up to be set in stone for the fight to be made by, I think, September 19th, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, that is from the word of mouth, and that is rumored through other YouTube channels, but I will give credit to Blue Blood. He said that's where the fight projection could possibly be made, but obviously, I'm not going to use that as a pure primary source. But if EJ is looking to make this fight by September, I think, there's a reason why Terence Crawford is training right now and Errol Spence is back to training as we speak in the gym. So I think, honestly, that just kind of shows like the dedication and the pride and talent that, Errol Spence and Terence Crawford have, heading into a potential matchup. So the biggest issue that I have is, when is this fight going to happen? Because if we're thinking like September 16th, around that area, that's not a bad date, but here's the problem. You're basically in market competition with the NFL and the NBA, because NBA preseason usually starts around September, and then the season officially begins in October. So I'm not against it. It's just that the problem that I have is just that, if you don't have, a proper date and venue of where this fight's going to be, then I'm not really sold on where this fight, will be, where this fight will be set up. And therefore, that's not really enticing the fans to, actually, actually trust, the potential sources that are covering, the potential fight date and venue. So I think what needs to happen is that Showtime and the PBC, they need to start coming out to talk about, the fight negotiations coming soon. And I think that's what's going to get a lot more people satisfied to look into that fight. And I think that's what's going to make it more interesting to the level of which, oh man, I'm sorry, man. I'm definitely tired because I woke up in the middle of the night. So, I'm just trying to go back to sleep, but, I'm a little bit half asleep. But, yeah, the thing is that if this fight does happen, this fight needs to be talked about in negotiations through the PBC. And Showtime and the PBC can easily do that, where they could have their podcast and talk about this fight potentially being set up. And once the fight, once the fight is obviously officially made, I think that's where people really need to start being serious about talking about the fight. And then when the fight starts building up fast for the promotion itself to be made for the fight, then I will say that that is a good build up to the promotion. But here's my issue with this. If this fight doesn't get made by September, and let's just say EJ tried everything in his power to make this fight with Terence Crawford because he really wants that, wants that final belt to become undisputed. And if Terence Crawford, for some weird ass reason, decides to say, you know what, I'm going to continue to duck Spence, in which I think he is. I don't trust Terence Crawford's words. I don't trust his actions. And no matter what he tries to say that, he's going to be, training up inside, love the gym and do this with Bomac and go left and right and flip dick and do all that. Nah, dude. No. No. Uh, Terence Crawford, I'm not believing anything you say until you write your name in blood and ink to show that you're fighting Errol Spence and X. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but Terence Crawford, you're a pathetic, pitiful piece of shit liar. And Crawford, he's been known to do that because he says like that he's gonna potentially fight this guy like Manny Pacquiao, and hence the fight doesn't fucking happen. So therefore Crawford just goes about his way, just being a fucking loser and being a diva, and therefore you don't get to see the best fights that Crawford fights. And I think that this is like the last opportunity that Crawford's gonna have until he probably makes his move to like what 154, to which I don't think Bud's gonna stay in boxing for too long. But it's like Terence Crawford is not going to have any leverage coming into 154. He would still have to wait for the WBO to mandate their mandatory and Tim Tszyu to fight the winner between Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano in their rematch. And whoever wins that needs to honor the mandatory. But on top of that, Terence Crawford, he does not have any leverage coming into 154. So the problem that I have is that you're not maximizing your dollar where you can potentially fight all the big top level names like Errol Spence, where that fight at 147 can easily be made. But the problem is that you decided not to show up to the fight, and you let EJ talk all that shit in the ring towards you, and then you had Keyshawn Davis basically record you, in which Keyshawn Davis, look, I'm not gonna flame you, but you should have kept that shit very, very private, because what Keyshawn Davis did to Bud, that's not a good look on Bud, because he's now looking like a pussy, where he's sitting up inside the house with Keyshawn, and he's like, oh yeah, man, EJ talking that talk, and be like, dude, you had nothing else fucking better to do other than watch EJ's fight, but yet, like Crawford has stated that he doesn't care, like about EJ, that that fight's past me, blah blah blah. If you don't give a fuck about EJ's fights and don't care about fighting him, then why would you tune into his pay-per-view? Number one, and number two, what would make you think that you sitting at home and watching EJ's fight and letting him basically disrespect you on national television helps your imagery as a fighter? Because now you put yourself in a much worse position, and you are now in a catch-22 principle where you don't have the advantages anymore. You you basically put yourself in a bad spot where Errol Spence has now put himself in a huge leverage to basically talk his shit, and now you basically made Errol Spence extremely pissed off, and I think you've started like a demon that you cannot stop. So I think Errol Spence's marketability coming trying to build up the fight with Crawford, it's good and all, but I don't think that's gonna be enough to make the fight. I think Crawford, after what he looked at with Errol Spence's performance against Yordenis Ugas, I don't see Crawford wanting to get inside the ring with EJ. And no matter what he says with all this bullshit talk saying like, oh yeah, man, like I'll knock you out, like I'll knock you out, like I'll knock you out, and your twin cheerleader, Jermel Charlo, right? Both of you guys are easy work, blah blah blah. Um, I'm not sold on that. Like I don't see Crawford, ever having the balls to even try to beat Spence or even beat Jermel Charlo, just simply because that if Crawford does end up ducking Spence, I don't see Crawford beating Jermel Charlo. I think honestly the Jermel Charlo fight is actually 10 times more dangerous than a Errol Spence fight, because both of them are extremely dangerous fights and they're very destructive killers, in their own right as fighters. But I don't see Bud doing all this like switch hitting and having all these crazy good angles like Vasil High-Tech Lomachenko. Like, no, Terence Crawford will get knocked the fuck out by Jermel Charlo, because like we say about Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, fight predictions and fight breakdowns. If Crawford cannot have the power to keep a guy like Errol Spence off of him, and he does the same thing like that with Jermel Charlo, in which we all know Jermel Charlo has one good, high level chin, or he has a good iron chin. That pretty much shows that Jermel Charlo will just dog walk, the living shit out of Bud. And I don't see Terence Crawford hurting Jermel Charlo, because the only person that had the ability to somewhat hurt him was Brian Castano, but Brian Castano was getting his ass beat the hell up in most of the rounds, to which I thought Jermel Charlo had won that fight, because I thought Charlo had had won seven rounds to five. But I think honestly, how a fight will play out between him and Bud is that Jermel Charlo will be the giant pit bull, and Terence Crawford will be the small, like the small small Yorkshire Terrier, pretending to be a, like, ah, shit. He's pretending pretending to be a Doberman type of guard dog. So pretty much like the thing is that just based off of the genetic output between both fighters, Jermel Charlo's relentless pressure and his punch placement and the things that he does offensively, I don't think Crawford's going to be able to handle that physical pressure and the physical wear and tear that Charlo will bring to a fight like Crawford, because I don't think Crawford's going to handle that type of relentless pressure and punch punch output to even handle Jermel Charlo's punches. So I don't think Bud will have that much success against Jermel Charlo, and I think Jermel Charlo will brutally knock out Terence Crawford, just like how I see EJ knocking out Crawford. But I think Jermel Charlo will knock Bud out in the later rounds, to which Terence Crawford will not be able to have any success in that fight. So hopefully the fight between him and EJ can get made. It kind of seems like that the fight is nearing completion, but I'm hoping that the negotiations are set in stone, and I hope that Terence Crawford and Errol Spence can can get the right amount of money for both parties, knowing that EJ he should just treat Bud like a piece of shit and just say, you know what, fuck you. I'm going to get, 70-30 or 80-20 because I have 3 belts now, and I can use that as financial leverage coming into a fight. Obviously, that doesn't really determine A side, B side, but still, knowing that I have these belts on top of my pay per view for me drawing in more money, I don't see Errol Spence not wanting to say that I want, 80-20 or 70-30. And let's just say if that is going to be the case, you Bud Dick Riders cannot, disregard that. You can't disagree with that. Errol Spence is the A side over Bud. Who the fuck cares about accolades when your numbers are sky high? And I see Errol Spence doing that to Terence Crawford in the negotiations, where Crawford, he can't do anything but just say yes. Because, dude, you have nobody else left to fight. This is your last big fight. I don't see Jermell Charlo wanting to fight you. I think he's gonna say, "Fuck you, you're a piece of shit, and I don't need to fight you." But I would hope Jermell Charlo, despite his crazy ass, 22 or 20 something chromosomes that he doesn't have, with his intellectual knowledge, he would have the actual balls to actually just fight Crawford right away, to which I think he will. But the thing is, but the thing is that Terence Crawford would have to fight, literally like right away after he, let's just say, if he doesn't want to fight EJ and he just wants to wait for Jermell Charlo, well, that's fine and all, but the problem is that you have to wait for Tim Tszyu to be called, or to be basically declared as the mandatory to Charlo, and then Charlo, by that time frame, let's just say that he beats Brian Castano, in the rematch, and then he decides to just move up to 160. I just don't see that happening, because Jermell Charlo is just gonna look at Bud to be like, well, this guy's not really, this guy's not really worth my time, blah blah blah, and I don't see Jermell Charlo even wanting to fight Crawford, because that's not gonna benefit his financial interests and gain, in which obviously the fight itself would be absolutely popular, and that would be a huge fight, at 154. But knowing that Jermell Charlo doesn't need, Terence Crawford, he could very well just say, all right, well, fuck you, dude. I don't need you. I'm going straight to 160, and he'll do the same thing up there to try to go for another, undisputed reign. But I think either way, Errol Spence and Terence Crawford is a must-happen fight, and I hope it gets made, because Terence Crawford, I've been losing a lot of respect for you, and the way you've been moving with this EJ pressure being put on you, I don't see Crawford saying yes to a EJ negotiation, fight. But if EJ does get the fight, y'all know who I am rocking with. I am going with Team EJ, and I think EJ is going to brutally knock out Crawford in one round, simply because Terence Crawford, he got way too many holes defensively as a fighter, and EJ, he is way too deadly of a southpaw to actually hurt somebody with his relentless punches. And people say that you have to out-punch EJ to beat him, but that has been proven to be wrong, because EJ does not need to throw that many punches just to win a round. If he utilizes his jab enough where he's actually outlanding you with a jab the entire fight, then then Errol Spence automatically wins, because he has that style where you can't break him as a fighter. So fundamentally, you would have to find a way to to outpoint him. But The problem with that, like, is that Errol Spence comes to, he comes into a fight to do damage. He doesn't come to a fight to fight clean. And I mean, he does fight clean. Don't get it twisted. But it's like, if Errol Spence sees opportunities to hurt you, to like break you as a fighter, he's gonna like start punching you to the head. He's gonna, start punching you to your neck. Punch you to your solar plex. He'll find all the legal punches that he'll find. And I mean, if you start breaking down late game or early game or mid game, then you're automatically getting knocked the fuck out. Like, Errol Spence's punches are deadly punches. And people want to say he's a volume puncher, but I don't see that to be like that. I think Errol Spence is a knockout artist, but the problem is that he has to facilitate his punches in order to knock you out, versus for Terence Crawford, despite his lack of competition that he has been facing, that have not fought him at his prime. He's been knocking out low-level opposition leading up to a Errol Spence fight. So you can look good for your last 10 fights or last 10 previous fights, knocking out dudes that everyone knew that you were going to knock out, but at the end of the day, your skills don't pay the bills to be sold to make people believe that you're going to beat somebody that has been, fighting guys bigger than you and stronger than you, and they were in their prime better than you. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I truly believe Errol Spence will beat the crap out of Crawford. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. And I appreciate you guys for coming through. So be sure to like this video, and I will see. I will see you guys later. Alright, thank you. Bye.